same time takes concentration. Beating 10 games Beating one game of Pokemon Platinum is pretty easy. Beating 2 games at the same time takes concentration. Beating 10 games at the same time is a challenge. But what if I wanted to beat 100 games, or 1,000, or 1,000,000? What if I wanted to beat all of them? About 2 years ago, I set out to find a solution to Pokemon Platinum, a sequence of inputs that will always beat the game. If I could guarantee that this sequence always wins, it wouldn't matter if I were playing one game or 1,000,000, the game would be solved. Running into roadblocks. There were just too many unavoidable scenarios with 1 in a billion chances of failure. In theory, you can never guarantee 100% success. There will always be some game among the infinite possibilities that will fail, no matter how small the odds. However, there aren't actually infinite games of Pokemon Platinum.
No, stop
There's
that.
a limit to how many paths the game can take when fed the same inputs.
Stop
I
that.
could potentially reach 100% success, but
No
it would
cats.
require knowledge
Come
of
here.
every possibility the game can produce. I'd have to practically be omniscient. Before we can do anything, first we need to understand how Pokemon's random number generation works. Normally, if we want to produce a random number, we can roll a die. Dice are useful because they have an equal chance to roll any of the numbers on their faces and are functionally unpredictable. But Pokemon can't just roll a die, since computers are incapable of producing randomness. Instead, let's take the faces of the die and arrange them in sequence. Then we can shuffle them into a different order.
Just
This
need
shuffling
a
process
little
isn't random either.
snack.
It's mathematically derived, and every game of Pokemon will produce the exact same order. When we want to produce a random number, we just take the next number in the sequence, looping back to the beginning when we run out. In this simple example, it should be easy to see that not only is this not random, but we can make true statements about all possible events. For example, this sequence will never produce more than 3 even numbers in a row, and if we roll the die 4 times, we're guaranteed to get at least one odd number. Being able to guarantee that certain events never happen, and that others will eventually happen if we roll the die enough times, will be our guiding principle when dealing with Pokemon's randomness. These principles carry over even when working with Pokemon's much larger sequence, which is 4.2 billion numbers long. When the game starts, it picks a starting location on the sequence. This is called the seed. Each seed can be considered a unique game of Platinum. Every single possible outcome of every single random event is contained on this sequence. If we want to play every possible game of Pokemon Platinum, we could play 4 billion games at the same time, one on each seed. Doing this would mean playing the game in all possible realities. Let's look at an example. If you flip a coin in the PokeWatch app, the game determines whether to show heads or tails by checking if the next number in the sequence is odd or even. If we flip the coin 100 times, how many flips could be heads? Normally, the answer would be 100, since you could flip heads 100 times in a row, despite it being very improbable. But we're no longer at the mercy of probability. There's only 4 billion possibilities. We just need to check all of them. Doing this directly in the game would take forever, as each coin flip takes a couple seconds to complete. Instead, I use my simulator, a perfect replica of the game that I built, which cuts out all the unnecessary waiting times, graphics, and sounds. It's highly optimized for exactly this purpose, simulating all 4 billion outcomes of Pokemon's random events, and I can do it millions of times faster than playing the game normally. In this case, I have the simulator show me the seed where it gets the most heads. This means that no matter what, you can get 80 heads at most. If I go into the game and find seed 2,462,131,795, we'll find that the coin does indeed land on heads 80 times within the 100 flips. This seed is actually unique. It's the only possible game that will get 80 heads. I know this because the simulator can show me how many heads every seed gets, which I've organized into this graph. As expected, the vast majority of seeds get somewhere close to a 50-50 split, with extremes at 20 and 80. Knowing this isn't particularly useful, but it demonstrates an important principle. Using the simulator, and the fact that Pokemon's random number generator isn't actually random, I can know what occurs in every possible game. But whether it's simulating coin flips or full battles, knowledge of all possible outcomes is just the first step. It's one tool among many that I'll need to beat every game of Pokemon Platinum. When the game starts, all 4 billion seeds are synced, and the main challenge for the rest of the run will be keeping them that way. Every seed will receive the same inputs, a predefined sequence of hundreds of thousands of button presses. With meticulous attention to detail and the simulator at my disposal, I can guarantee success in every possible game. But even with the simulator, I still have to make decisions. The first one to make is which starter to choose. Between the three, Chimchar is the required choice, due to having the highest speed stat and being the most offensively powerful overall. Of course, I actually receive billions of different versions of Chimchar. Every Pokemon receives minor variations in their stats, and gets one of 25 different natures. Each nature increases one stat by 10% and decreases another by the same amount. Given the sheer number of Chimchars, I'll basically always have to handle the worst case scenario. The first rival battle follows directly after. I lose this fight on purpose to avoid issues with some Chimchars winning and others losing, but this will be the only time I lose a battle. While that's happening, let's set up some ground rules. My goal is to ensure that my sequence of buttons reaches the credits in all possible games of Platinum. This is pretty easy, so as an added challenge, I'll be doing it under Nuzlocke restrictions. This means that Pokemon that faint can't be revived and must be released. If one of my team members faints in any seed, I must release them in all seeds. I'm forced to make an exception here for the first rival battle since I can't guarantee victory against him, but this will be the only one. Additionally, I'll only be able to catch the first Pokemon I encounter in each location. I'll also be trying to beat each major battle at the lowest level I can. Going forward, I'll only be showing relevant seeds on screen, as well as this game, which will be our primary timeline. In every single patch of grass, a wild battle will start in some seeds, while nothing happens in others. To deal with this, I use the menu in the overworld to keep games outside of battle stalled while the others run away. Chimchar is faster than even the fastest Starlies in this grass, so running away will always succeed. The first real obstacle is youngster Tristan, who has a level 5 Starly that knows Quick Attack. Weak versions of Chimchar lose this battle at level 5, so we need to level up, but there's nowhere to gain XP outside of wild Pokemon battles. But Chimchar is too weak to handle wild Pokemon too. Scratch just doesn't deal enough damage. Luckily, Professor Rowan gives me the TM for return right after leaving the lab, which deals damage that scales with the user's friendship. In order to achieve maximum damage, I'll have to max out Chimchar's friendship. You can increase a Pokemon's friendship in many different ways, but the only one that I can make use of right now is taking 128 steps. There's only a 50% chance to gain one friendship per 128 steps, but that's not a problem. The simulator can tell me how many steps I need to take for all seeds to reach the max value of 255. Among all 4 billion possibilities, I have to take 128 steps at least 438 times, and at most 597 times, which occurs in exactly 32,768 different seeds. This means that if I want to guarantee Chimchar's friendship is max in every seed, I'll have to take at least 76,416 steps. I run back and forth in the Poké Center for a few hours to accomplish this, and by the end, Chimchar's return will have a base power of 102, which is over double Scratch's. With this, I'll be ready to take on wild Pokemon, but how can I be sure that I'm in a battle in every seed? Once again, I can use the simulator to find out how many steps I need to take before I'm guaranteed to be in a battle. This graph shows how many seeds find a battle at each step number. The vast majority of seeds will find a battle between 6 and 17 steps. But what we're interested in is the outlier at the bottom, which will take 155 steps to enter a wild battle. At least, it takes 155 steps on most days of the year. The game is programmed to decrease wild Pokemon encounters on certain days. Since I want to beat every possible game of Platinum, I'll have to account for that too. Redoing the simulation, we find that on those specific days, it will take 195 steps to find a wild Pokemon at most. Changing direction counts as a step for triggering wild battles, so I can just spin around instead of walking. If I want to keep the games in sync, I'll have to take 195 steps every time I want to battle a wild Pokemon. This is because, as we learned earlier, the random number generator is on a sequence. Some other game will always be moving on to this outlier as another moves off. Finally, I can begin my training session in the grass, but there's one more problem I need to deal with. As different versions of Chimchar train, they'll gain experience at different rates as they encounter different wild Pokemon. I can use the simulator to track how much experience is gained in every game, but I can't have it tell me which buttons to press. It just isn't built for that. As the difference in XP becomes larger, the difficulty in handling every unique case grows. It becomes too much work to keep track of when my team is leveling up, or learning new moves, and picking the right buttons to press. To deal with this, I use what I call a stopping rule. Stopping rules are events that halt progress for every game that reaches them, allowing lagging games to catch up. Here, learning a new move is a stopping rule. By being very particular with which buttons I press, I can keep Chimchars that reach level 9 busy trying to learn Taunt, while others continue training. I make use of various menus in the games that are still training to reposition the cursor in the games that are learning a new move. I also make sure that all games enter the loop on the same menu so that they're in sync. The simulator tells me when all games have finished training, and then I have them all learn Taunt at the same time. The only difference between games now is a small bit of experience the final battle before leveling up gives, but this difference is very manageable, especially since I can just use another stopping rule to learn the next move. With Chimchar leveled up, I go and defeat young Sir Tristan, which has taken over 5 hours to prepare for. Unfortunately for me, this is on the low side of amount of time spent prepping for trainer battles. A little bit later, Chimchar is about to evolve, and I use another stopping rule to handle it. This time, Chimchar learning Mach Punch when it evolves realigns the games. As long as I carefully manage what buttons I press, there will only ever be 2 scenarios, the ones that are training and the ones that are looping. With Chimchar evolved, I can head to Orberg City to face the first gym, but I'll have to deal with this wandering trainer first. Wandering trainers and NPCs move around a confined space by using 2 random values, one to pick the direction they'll move, and one to determine how long to wait before trying to move again. If I wait just outside their zone, eventually the trainer will see me and start a battle. After simulating this NPC's movements, I find that in the worst seed, it will take exactly 442 seconds for them to find me, or about 7 minutes. Simulating the NPC's movements will help me navigate the overworld throughout the game, and guarantee that all games enter battles at the same time. After defeating this trainer, I can move on to face the first gym. The lowest level I can face Rourke at is 18. This is mostly due to the fact that Geodude's Rock Throw would KO low defense versions of Monferno at level 17 if it deals max damage twice. At the beginning of the battle, I use an X attack I picked up earlier to boost Monferno's damage, which allows the weakest Monfernos to deal at least 26 damage to Geodude with Mach Punch, which is an important number. Trainer Pokemon always have the same stats, so all versions of Rourke's Geodude will have 32 HP. After the first Mach Punch, it will have at most 6 HP. Rourke is guaranteed to use a potion here, which heals for 20, bringing Geodude back up to the magic number. This effectively means that Rourke wastes his turn using a potion, since the next Mach Punch will KO Geodude anyway. This gives me a free turn to use a potion of my own to heal off Rock Throw damage. In seeds where Rock Throw missed twice, the potion doesn't do anything. And in seeds that dealt a lot of damage and got to Onix early, the potion isn't even necessary since we didn't get hit by a second Rock Throw anyway. From this point, I can just keep spamming A to use Mach Punch, which will eventually realign the games after the battle. With Rourke defeated, I get the first gym badge in every possible game. Only 7 more to go. The first thing I need to do post-Rourke is some EV training. Effort values are bonuses to stats Pokemon get for defeating other Pokemon. The species of defeated Pokemon determines which stat will get the bonus. For an upcoming fight, I need Monferno to have an extra 12 HP EVs, which I can get from 12 Bidoofs. The only place I can find Bidoofs is in the grass along with Starlies, so I'll just have to keep fighting until I'm guaranteed to get the 12 HP EVs I need. In the unluckiest seed, I need to do 70 battles to get all the Bidoofs. Monferno is too far away from the next new move to align the games right now, so I'll leave the training session with the games desynced. But as long as I don't reach level 26 too soon, I'll be able to realign later on that stopping rule. EV training will be an important part of keeping my team's level low, and using the simulator, I can rest assured that there's no possibility that I find 70 Starlies in a row. When the training is finished, the low XP versions of this session will be at different level than the others, but that's okay, as I've planned out the next section of the game to account for this. I head to Floroma Town next, and now that I have access to repels, getting around is much faster since I don't have to deal with wild Pokemon in every single patch of grass. The reason that I had to get at least 12 HP EVs is Commander Mars. The frailest Monfernos will survive in the worst case scenario with exactly 1 HP thanks to the extra EVs. Meanwhile, the weakest Monfernos will need an extra turn to deal enough damage, and some games will level up after this while others won't. There's a lot to keep track of in every battle. The weakest Monferno, the strongest Monferno, the XP differences, what the AI may or may not do. It gets pretty complicated to plan out what buttons to press, even now when my team is only one Pokemon. But don't worry, I'm keeping track of it all on a color-coded spreadsheet, which is good, because I'm about to quadruple the size of my team. After getting all the XP I can from nearby trainers, I head into the grass to realign Monferno's XP with another stopping rule. I'll be bringing Monferno all the way to level 29 to get through Eterna Forest. Mostly due to this Pachirisu, and the fact that you're forced to bring an NPC as a partner for double battles. This double battle causes a lot of problems, but if I talk about every random trainer battle that causes problems in depth, this video would be hours long, so suffice to say that I hate being paired up with NPCs. When I exit the forest, I arrive in Eterna City, and the first order of business is crushing the Grass-type gym. Gardenia doesn't really stand a chance, as Monferno is a much higher level than it needs to be for this battle. After getting cut, I go deal with Team Galactic. Commander Jupiter is a small problem, but nothing I can't handle, and afterwards, Cynthia shows up to give me an egg. This will be the second member of my team, a Togepi. I hatch Togepi and give it an XP share to level it up. After a couple of quick detours, I move on to Hearthome City, where I'm given an Eevee as a gift. Then it's back to Eterna to visit the old chateau, where I catch a Ghastly. This is possible because the only Pokemon you can find in the chateau are Ghastlies, so if I spin around long enough to get an encounter, I can guarantee that it's a Ghastly. The catch rate formula actually allows for the chance of success to be 100%, and if I put Ghastly to sleep using Yawn and then throw a Nest Ball, it's guaranteed to catch it. And just like that, my team is now 4 strong. The next big challenge is the Ghost-type gym. The obvious solution for this gym is to use Ghastly, but in order to defeat Fantina, Ghastly would need to evolve and be level 33, and I can do better than that. My plan is to use Eevee instead. Eevee learns Bite at level 29, which will be the main source of damage, so the first step is to level up. Back at Lake Verity, training begins. I do this here because the only Pokemon in this grass are Starly and Bidoof, which give speed and HP EVs, which I'll be needing for later. This training session will take about 20 hours, and will completely max out Eevee's EVs in speed and HP in every game. Most games will spend half those hours on the menu to learn Bite, waiting for everything to sync back up. When it's finally over, I head back to Hearthome and into the gym, which has a pretty annoying gimmick. The gym itself is divided into 4 rooms. The trick is simple. There's a blue tile on the floor somewhere that indicates which door to go through. Pick the right door, and you advance. Pick the wrong door, and you're kicked back out to the beginning. There's no way for me to pick the right door in every game, so I just pick the same 2 over and over again until all seeds end up in the final room with Fantina. At the start, all seeds enter the first room, and then attempt to go through the triangle door. Some of them make it through. From this point on, I'll need to handle both possibilities at once. Navigation through the second room must be done very carefully, so that games still in the first room don't accidentally leave the gym or bump into an NPC. Eventually, the games in the second room reach the door, and some of them make it to Fantina. Now there's 3 scenarios. I'll have to make sure the games that make it to Fantina don't leave the room. The games that haven't made it to Fantina are realigned, and the process repeats itself. Simulating this shows me the worst possible reality, which will take 303 tries before succeeding. This will take about 14 hours, mostly due to the wandering trainer in the first room. If I could just walk directly to the triangle door, this would be much shorter, but since some seeds might bump into the wandering trainer, I have to spend a bunch of time holding the right and up buttons to align against the walls. This seed will take so many steps that there's a risk Eevee might gain too much friendship and evolve into Espeon or Umbreon. So prior to doing this, I actually have to take Eevee out into the grass and purposefully reduce its friendship by feeding it bitter medicine. Despite the fact that Eevee deserves better than this, I simply can't deal with the friendship evolutions, since they're based on the time of day, and I'm working under the condition that all the games are on different times. Back in the gym, the unluckiest seed finally arrives on its final loop. Some games have been wandering around Fantina for hours at this point, but once everything is back to being aligned, the battle can finally begin. The lowest level I can do the battle at is 32, with an Eevee that knows Substitute, Double Team, and Bite. The key to this battle is Substitute. Substitute causes the user to lose 25% of its max health, and in exchange puts a decoy on the field in their place. This protects the user from almost all status moves and stat decreases. The decoy has HP equal to the amount spent to create it, and will take damage instead of the user until it breaks. In the battle with Fantina, Duskull comes out first. Duskull has pitiful stats, and can't actually deal enough damage to break the weakest Eevee's Substitute in one hit, meaning I'm guaranteed to still have it out on turn 2. Though the main benefit is that Substitute will prevent Will-O-Wisp from burning Eevee. A couple of bites will take out Duskull, and Haunter will come out next. Fantina's Haunter has a somewhat unfortunate moveset. Hypnosis and Confuse Ray are blocked by Substitute, Shadow Ball doesn't affect Eevee, and Sucker Punch only works if I use an attacking move. If I just don't attack, Haunter is completely useless. On some seeds, Duskull could break the Substitute with a max damage Future Sight, so the first move I make against Haunter is to create another one. But now I have unlimited turns to set up. Haunter will never use Shadow Claw unless it's completely out of other moves, so the first thing I do is stall until this happens. Then I swap out Togepi to remove Eevee's potentially damaged Substitute, then back to Eevee to make a fresh one. Finally, I can use Double Team 6 times to max out my evasion. I also use a potion to heal off Substitute damage, and an X speed to ensure I'll be faster than the upcoming Mismagius. Haunter faints after 1 to 3 bites, depending on how strong Eevee is, and I can easily realign the games for Mismagius by spamming B. Mismagius is at an extreme disadvantage here. In order to even have a chance, it would need to crit on the first turn to break the Substitute, and then confuse Eevee on the second turn with either Confuse Ray or Psybeam. Anything else guarantees a loss. Behind the scenes, when I simulate this battle for the first time, I have to tell the simulator what commands to do. This first set of commands will likely lose in some of the seeds, so I'll have to redo the simulation with a new set of commands. But not every seed needs to be resimulated. I can have the simulator output how many seeds are still battling at each turn. At the start of turn 1, all 4 billion seeds are obviously still battling, as nothing has happened yet. At the start of turn 2, 270 million seeds are no longer battling, or about 6%, which is exactly what we'd expect since the chance for Eevee to crit is 6%, and a crit would end the battle. But by the start of turn 4, we only have a measly 4 million seeds that are still battling. These are all the versions of Mismagius that actually manage to land a crit and then confuse Eevee. If I check the 789 seeds where Eevee loses, I find that they all occur on or after turn 4, which means the losing seeds must be among these 4 million. This means that as long as I don't change the commands for turns 1, 2, and 3, I only have to simulate these 4 million seeds, which will be much, much faster. I can repeat this process multiple times, continuing to narrow down the group of losing seeds until I've come up with a solution that beats all of them. In this case, I make use of a technique called option selecting, which lets me make different moves depending on the current state of the battle. On the second turn, some versions of Eevee get confused, but others don't. If I try to attack while confused, Eevee could faint, so I use a heal powder instead to cure the confusion. But versions of Eevee that don't get confused don't need the heal powder. I use the menus to keep the games that got confused busy while the others use Bite, effectively allowing me to use the same exact button presses to make 2 different moves, depending on whether Eevee got confused or not. This method allows me to ensure I only use Bite if I'm not confused, and Mismagius can't confuse me forever. Eventually she'll miss or choose a different move, and when that happens, Eevee will use Bite and end the battle. As the fight goes on, I can just start attacking even if Eevee could be confused, as there's so few seeds still battling that I can just check all of them and make sure Eevee doesn't faint. Despite the fact that it's theoretically possible for Eevee to lose here, any of the seeds where it would have happened have already been beaten. After the final seed finishes its battle, I can finally leave the gym, but I can't forget about all the seeds that beat the fight early and have just been wandering around for a while. Using the walls, I can align every seed regardless of when it finished the battle, and once everyone is resynced, I'm finally done with Fantina. From here, the battles only become more complicated, and even normal trainers in the various routes will require planning to handle. In the interest of time, I won't be discussing every battle in detail. It's more important to gain an understanding of the general strategies I use to deal with everything. At this point, we've gone over 3 of the 6 major tools I need to finish the game. The simulator, which helps me check every seed to guarantee success, stopping rules, which keep the games in sync despite RNG, and option selecting, which allows me to make different moves in different games depending on the circumstances. The remaining 3 tools all come into play before the next gym, and after that, we'll have learned everything we need to beat the second half of the games. Right after Fantina, I'll have to battle my rival and his improved team. His opening Pokemon will be Staravia, which is difficult to deal with. The main issue is Double Team. None of my team members can survive long enough against Staravia to overcome the evasion, which means I can't let a double team happen. I'd have to one-hit KO Staravia to accomplish this, but even Monferno, who is now an Infernape, can't do it thanks to Staravia having Intimidate, which will lower my attack. Intimidate will only trigger once, so I could have a different member of my team get intimidated and then switch Infernape in afterwards, but by that point, Staravia will have used Double Team in many of the games. This problem can be solved with something I call priming. Prior to the battle, I bring Eevee out into the grass and encounter a wild Pokemon. I use Substitute to reduce my HP by 25% and then run away. Repeating this 2 more times brings Eevee's health to 25%. Then I heal exactly 10 HP with an Oran Berry, and use Substitute 1 last time. In total, Eevee will have lost 100% of its health due to Substitute, and gain 10 from the Oran Berry, leaving it with at least 10 HP, and at most 13 due to rounding on Substitute. Eevee is now primed for the battle with my rival. At the start, I send out Eevee to get intimidated. Importantly, Staravia knows Quick Attack, which is a priority move. When the AI is deciding what move to pick, it will score each move using a bunch of different criteria. Notably, priority moves like Quick Attack get a huge bonus to their score if the AI thinks it can KO your current battler with it. At such low health, even the highest defense version of Eevee will faint to Quick Attack, so the AI is guaranteed to choose it in every game. This lets me switch to Infernape without worrying about Double Team, and an unintimidated Infernape can clean up the rest of my rival's team. Priming my team members to certain levels of HP will allow me to manipulate the AI throughout the game. The only requirement is having some way to reduce HP by a percentage. Right now, only Eevee and Gastly can do it with Substitute and Curse, but that will be changing shortly. The main use for priming is to bait out priority moves, which prevents an opponent from using a better move instead. This might feel sort of useless outside of this extremely specific Intimidate scenario, but Togepi is about to learn a move which makes it worthwhile. After the rival battle ends, Togepi hits level 19 from the XP share and learns Encore. Encore forces an opponent to keep using the last move it used over and over again, and lasts between 4 to 8 turns. Paired with a primed Pokemon, I can manipulate the AI into using a weak move like Quick Attack, switch to Togepi, and force them to keep using it. Togepi also evolves into Togetic afterwards, and then I head to the old chateau to train Gastly with an XP share, aligning everything on the stopping rule when Gastly evolves and learns Shadow Punch. I also make a brief stop at Valley Windworks to catch one of the Pokemon there. I can't actually guarantee which one I catch, but my plan is to use them much later as cannon fodder, so it doesn't really matter. They'll spend most of their time in the PC anyway. When I finally get to the next route, I'm able to catch another wild Pokemon using a well-known mechanic called the Repel trick. Repels work by rejecting encounters if the potential wild Pokemon is a lower level than your party leader. In the grass in Route 209, the wild Pokemon span levels 17 to 20. If I make Infernape my party leader, I'll encounter no wild Pokemon at all. The game will still attempt to cause an encounter to happen, but the Repel will just reject it since Infernape is a higher level. But if I make Togetic my party leader, I could guarantee an encounter with Roselia, since Roselia is the only species in this grass that gets up to level 20. All I have to do is apply a Repel and spin around in the grass until the game generates an encounter with a level 20 Roselia. In the worst seed, this will take 6,307 steps. Capturing Roselia is a little more complicated than the previous two. I'll need to put it to sleep and do a little bit of damage before throwing a nest ball. Attacking Roselia directly is dangerous since I could potentially KO it with a strong crit, so I use Haunter's Nightshade instead, which deals damage equal to Haunter's level and can't crit. Yawn is guaranteed to put Roselia to sleep for at least one turn, so I'm able to throw a nest ball before it has a chance to wake up. The catch rate is 100% even if Roselia heals a little bit from Leech Seed. And I have a Cherry Berry on both Haunter and Togetic to deal with Stun Spore.
Oh, that's smart.
With this, my core team is almost complete, and with the Repel trick, there's now plenty of options for additional team members. There's also the matter of choosing which evolution of Eevee to get, but that'll have to wait until later. Back in Route 209, we need to rewind a bit to before catching Roselia. Two of the trainers in this route are joggers. Joggers will only battle you in the morning, which means the games are going to desync from each other depending on the time of day. Infernape can deal with both of these trainers, but the experience these battles give will make it much more difficult to keep Infernape aligned. Normally, I'd solve this problem with a stopping rule, but the next one isn't for a while, and I want to keep Infernape's level as low as I can. Instead, I use the sixth and final tool to handle this. Mail is a class of item meant to allow you to send messages to the person you're trading Pokemon with. You can buy it in most Pokemarts for cheap, and it even has its own section in the bag. But mail isn't useful to me as an item. It's useful to me as a piece of memory. Prior to entering Route 209, I bought 2 pieces of mail at the Eterna and Hearthome Pokemarts. When I go there later, the joggers decide whether they will battle me immediately, meaning it doesn't matter if the time changes while I'm inside the route doing other things. It only matters what time it was when I entered. I face a couple of the trainers here to bring Togetic to level 20, and then catch Roselia. Now it's time to face the second jogger. The games will desync based on what time of day they entered the route at. In games that entered in the morning, the battle begins with the jogger, but in every other game, I'll remain in the overworld. I open the menu by pressing X and navigate to my mail pouch. Games battling the jogger will just be futzing around in the battle menus. In the games that aren't battling, I throw away 1 piece of mail, then reset the bag and menu to what it was before I opened it. Then I finish the battle in the morning games, and everything is more or less back in sync, aside from Infernape's experience and the piece of mail that I tossed away. When I enter Solation Town, I gain access to the daycare. Standing in front of the daycare lady, I open the bag and check my mail. Whether there's 1 or 2 pieces of mail is entirely dependent on whether I battled the joggers. If I press down then A, games with only 1 piece of mail will close the bag, but the others will stay in the menu. This lets me desync the games again on purpose. With a little bit of finagling, I can use this desynchronization to position the games that battled the joggers to the side, and the other games in front of the daycare lady. Then I put Infernape into the daycare, but only in the games that didn't battle the joggers. Each step I take now will give Infernapes that are in the daycare 1 experience, and I need to make up 1,132 XP to realign the 2 scenarios. Once that's done, I use my memory mail to desync the games again so that only the games that put Infernape into the daycare talk to the lady and take them out. Games that put Infernape in the daycare will have the party order all messed up, so I check my mail 1 last time to desync the games and reorganize my team in the daycare game so that everything is back in its correct place. Aligning against the walls puts everything back in sync, aside from a little bit of money from the joggers, but that's not really an issue. This example is pretty simple, but it demonstrates the core idea. Memory mail will allow me to take different actions in different games based on prior events. Since the mail is so out of the way in my bag and unnecessary for anything else, I can keep the games synced up for long stretches of time and only desync them at the moment that I need to do different actions. In essence, different games remember which scenario they are only
So he's gonna have to resync up the amount of mail he has, right?
when I check my mail, and will respond differently to the same inputs afterwards. It also manages itself. When I no longer need to remember something, I can use the memory mail to trash the memory mail, realigning it in the bag so I can remember something else.
Oh.
We've now gone over all the major tools I'll be using to beat the game, or at least the ones that aren't based on normal game mechanics. At this point, there's 5 gym badges between me and the Elite Four. To get through it all in a timely manner, I'm about to considerably pick up the pace, so lock in, it's time for the gauntlet. Before I leave for the next gym, there's a bit of business to take care of. I use the daycare to level up Roselia and Eevee, catch a second Ghastly in the Lost Tower, grab a Waterstone from the ruins, and use the daycare again. Then it's time to make the trek all the way through Veilstone and Pastoria to grab the TM for Toxic. Along the way, I finally evolve Eevee. Of all the options, Umbreon and Espeon can't be guaranteed. Leafeon and Flareon are both somewhat redundant, and Glaceon isn't available until the 7th gym. Between Jolteon and Vaporeon, I end up picking Vaporeon thanks to its durability and effective immunity to water-type moves. After grabbing Toxic, I'm able to catch a Hippopotas in the Maniac Tunnel using the Repel trick. Hippopotas is already relatively rare to find, and the simulator determines the worst seed to take 66,630 steps to find one, which is about 2 hours of spinning. Catching Hippopotas requires option selecting between using an Awakening and using Toxic, but a poisoned Hippopotas is guaranteed to be captured with a Dusk Ball. Low defense versions of Vaporeon come close to fainting against strong versions of Hippopotas, and high attack, low HP versions of Hippopotas against frail versions of Vaporeon come close to KOing themselves with the recoil from Takedown. Regardless, there's no seeds where I don't catch it. With the addition of Hippopotas, my core team is finally complete, which means it's time to get some gym badges. First up is the fighting type gym leader, Maylene. The lowest level I can do this battle at is 31, with both of my Haunters and Togetic. Haunter 1 will deal with Meditite and Machoke, and Haunter 2 and Togetic will handle Lucario. All versions of Haunter are faster than Meditite, and Shadow Ball is always a one-hit KO, so Meditite isn't a problem. But Maylene's Machoke can't be one-hit KO'd, and is potentially faster than Haunter, depending on Haunter's nature. A nature that lowers Haunter's speed will make us just barely slower, but a nature that lowers Haunter's defense will allow Machoke to one-hit KO us. Luckily for me, there's a set of 5 berries which will confuse your Pokemon based on what stat their nature decreases. If I put an Iapapa berry on Haunter, only the Haunters with a nature that reduces defense will get confused. Prior to the gym battle, I can use this berry to desync games that have a defense-reducing nature, and use a piece of memory mail to remember it. Haunter is primed to below half health so that the berry triggers on initiating the battle, and a full heal only affects Haunters that get confused, which desyncs the games. When I go to the department store later, I can use the memory mail to desync the games and buy defense-boosting vitamins in the games with low defense, and speed-boosting vitamins in every other game, which is important since I don't have the money to be buying vitamins I don't actually need. This is one of the main uses of memory mail. Paired with the nature berries, I can take different actions in different games depending on the nature of my team members. Back in the battle with Maylene, low defense and HP versions of Haunter will survive a max damage Rock Tomb crit with 1 HP. And all versions of Haunter will be faster than Machoke now. This lets me use Shadow Ball twice to take out Machoke without issue. Her final Pokemon is Lucario, and if I send out Togetic, her AI will choose between using Force Palm and Drain Punch. Prior to this battle, I EV trained Togetic in Maniac Tunnel for a couple of hours to increase its defense. This lets the most fragile Togetic survive either move with 1 HP. Togetic responds with Encore, which locks Lucario into using a fighting type move. Haunter is of course immune to fighting, which gives it a couple free turns to slowly KO Lucario. Encoring the AI into using a move I'm immune to will be a staple of my battle strategy for most of the game. With Maylene defeated, Hippopotas evolves into Hippowdon, I gain access to Fly, and I waste no time heading to Pastoria for the 5th gym. The lowest level I can beat Crasher Wake at is 37, using Vaporeon, Hippowdon, and Roselia. Vaporeon's immunity to water-type moves makes this battle pretty easy. At the start, an X accuracy gives Toxic an 100% chance to hit, and after poisoning Gyarados, Vaporeon can just stall until it faints. Then Floatzel comes out, and Vaporeon can use Toxic on it too, but Vaporeon can't survive long enough to stall out Floatzel. So I have to switch to Hippowdon, who I've primed to a specific HP range prior to this battle. Hippowdon can be primed by equipping it with the Sticky Barb, an item you pick up in Veilstone which damages the holder for 1/8 its max HP. I need to prime Hippowdon for this battle since being at full health can actually result in a loss. To understand why, we can look at Floatzel's moves and how much damage they deal to Hippowdon. First, let's make a note of how much damage Crunch deals, which will be important in a moment. Normally, Brine will deal the most damage, so the AI will always pick Brine. But when Hippowdon gets switched in, it gets hit by Crunch, which potentially lowers my defense and increases the damage of Floatzel's physical moves. This causes Ice Fang to deal the most damage, but I can't let the AI start picking Ice Fang, since that could KO Vaporeon. As I've mentioned before, the AI loves using priority moves if it thinks they'll KO you. If I prime Hippowdon such that the damage from the original Crunch is guaranteed to put me into Aqua Jet range, then I can avoid the AI picking Ice Fang. But I also have to keep Hippowdon's health high enough so that a Crunch crit doesn't KO it. This creates a sweet spot of HP values that's large enough to account for every combination of natures and stats that Hippowdon can have. The end result is that Hippowdon gets primed to 3/8 of its health, then healed for 20 by a potion, which puts all versions of Hippowdon into the sweet spot. When I switch back to Vaporeon, I can guarantee Floatzel will be using Aqua Jet or Brine, which will heal me instead. This lets me stall for enough turns to let Toxic KO Floatzel. Quagsire comes out last, and is easily handled by a quadruply effective Magical Leaf from Roselia. After defeating Wake, I can go get Surf in Celestic Town. Then it's off to Iron Island, where I acquire a shiny stone which evolves Togetic into Togekiss. The 6th gym is nearby, and I'll have to deal with Byron's Steel-type team. Infernape will be instrumental at warming the bench in this battle, because I'll be doing it at level 40 with Hippowdon, Vaporeon, and Togekiss. Byron starts out with Magneton, and the most brittle Hippowdons will survive a Flash Cannon crit with 1 HP. A quad-effective Earthquake easily takes out Magneton in response. Then he sends out Steelix, which Vaporeon can bait into using Earthquake. If we look at Steelix's moves, 2 of them are ineffective against water types, and Sandstorm is useless since Hippowdon's Sandstream already started one. This makes Earthquake the only option the AI will choose. Using this knowledge, I switch to Togekiss while Steelix uses Earthquake, and encore it next turn to force it to continue using Earthquake. This gives Togekiss a couple free turns to buff up. Then I can use Aura Sphere twice to one-hit KO both Steelix and Byron's last Pokemon, Bastiodon. Beating Byron gives me access to Strength, and it's a short trip up to Snowpoint City for the 7th gym. Finally, Infernape gets to participate, and easily handles the Ice types with a little support from Vaporeon, Hippowdon, and the Pokemon I caught at Valley Windworks a long time ago. Prior to this battle, I use a piece of memory mail to track Vaporeon's nature, which will determine which of the healing nature berries I'll give it. With Hippowdon setting up Stealth Rock, and Vaporeon baton passing Infernape a speed boost, Flamethrower takes care of Candace's entire team. Infernape is level 45 for this battle, so that's the lowest level I can do it at, but this gets me the 7th gym badge, making Volkner, the electric gym leader, the only thing between me and the Elite Four. Let's take a little breather here to go over some things. I've collected 7 of the 8 gym badges I need, and through meticulous planning have kept my team around level 45. In the PC, I also have a Riolu, which you get as an egg when leaving Iron Island, and a Machoke, which I caught using the Repel trick in one of the routes, and has only ever been used for HMs like Rock Smash, Strength, and Rock Climb. Before going to Volkner's gym, I have to handle the plot of the game. Heading to Spear Pillar, Cyrus is there attempting to end the universe and remake it without any human emotions. Unfortunately, the game forces you to stop him. He ends up dragging us into Distortion World, where we plunk around for a bit before battling him. Since I can bait his Gyarados into using Earthquake and then encore it, this battle goes the same way Byron's did. Giratina shows up afterward, and at this point, I do have the Master Ball, but I don't use it here. In fact, I can't even guarantee that I defeat Giratina with my team. Wild Pokemon are my toughest opponents, since they pick their moves at random, and I rely on being able to predict the AI a lot. Instead, I run away from Giratina, which is apparently a valid option, and leave Distortion World. Doing all this gives me access to the 3 legendary spirits, and I'll be using the Master Ball to catch Azelf, but I won't be using it until the Elite Four, so we'll come back to this. Before leaving for Sunyshore, I make a small detour to grab a shiny stone, which I use to evolve Roselia into Roserade. Then I spend several hours in Maniac Tunnel pumping up Hippowdon's defense stat. This also doubles as a training session for Haunter, since the XP share will transfer both the XP and the EVs gained by Haunter to Hippowdon. As usual, everything syncs up on a stopping roll, and the simulator keeps track of how many EVs each seed will get. Haunter's distance from the stopping rule is planned out in advance to ensure that in the worst case, Hippowdon still gets the 200 defense EVs it needs. Hippowdon needs these EVs to manipulate Volkner's AI in a way that I haven't talked about yet, which is what Pokemon the AI switches in after you KO one. At the start of this battle, Volkner sends out Jolteon, and I send out Hippowdon. Volkner will pick Iron Tail, since it's the strongest move Jolteon has against Hippowdon, and it'll potentially lower my defense on hit. I use Earthquake afterward for the one-hit KO, and now Volkner's AI has to decide which of its Pokemon it'll send out next. It does this using a two-step process. The first step is the Type Advantage check. Normally the AI would see which of its Pokemon has the best type advantage against your current battler, but because all of Volkner's Pokemon are single-type electric, the AI actually skips this step. The next step is the power check, where the AI will look at every move its living team members know, and simulate a max damage non-crit attack against your current battler, but as if Jolteon was the one that was making the attack. As it goes through each move, it keeps track of which one dealt the most damage. Raichu's Focus Blast doesn't deal the most, but let's make a note of it for later. The AI ends up determining that Electivire's Giga Impact deals the most damage overall, and so it will send out Electivire. I should note here that this only occurs in games with a Hippowdon that has low defense and high special defense. But I don't want Volkner to send out Electivire next. I need him to send out Raichu. This is what the defense EVs are for. Since Focus Blast deals special damage, increasing Hippowdon's defense only lowers Giga Impact's damage. Starting at 200 defense EVs, the worst possible version of Hippowdon takes more damage from Focus Blast. This ensures that Raichu will come out next. The reason I need Raichu to come out next is that it's the only one of Volkner's Pokemon that I can set up against. After KOing Jolteon, I send out Riolu, which is still level 1 after hatching from the egg. I've equipped it with the Sticky Barb, and its only job is to get hit by Quick Attack. Getting hit by a move that makes contact transfers ownership of the Sticky Barb, so this will give Raichu the Barb. Holding the Barb will slowly decrease its health. The AI will only ever pick Focus Blast against Hippowdon, so I switch to Haunter. Haunter stalls for a turn, and then I send out Roserade, which will survive a Charge Beam. The Sticky Barb and Sandstorm will put Raichu below 25% health on this turn. The AI will always use a potion if it has one and its Pokemon is below 25% health. This gives me a free turn to use Toxic Spikes. After a couple more turns of stalling, Raichu gets low enough that Haunter can KO it with Sucker Punch. This is just to retrieve the Sticky Barb from Raichu, since I would otherwise lose my precious Barb after the battle. Volkner will send out Luxray next, and the Toxic Spikes will poison it immediately. I once again stall until Volkner uses a potion, giving me a free turn to use Earthquake. This potentially doesn't KO Luxray, which desyncs the games, but this can be resolved by just sending out Vaporeon in both scenarios. This KOs Luxray by stalling a turn, and baits Electivire into using Thunder Punch. Both these scenarios can then be realigned by sending out Hippowdon. Along with the damage from Poison and Sandstorm, Hippowdon can take it out with a single Earthquake. You might be wondering why I don't just attack directly and have to stall so much, but none of my Pokemon are capable of standing and delivering. Weak versions of them just get decimated by crits. Volkner is defeated at level 47, which gets me my final gym badge and opens up the way through Victory Road. The trainers inside Victory Road are no slouches, and practically every single one could have their own section describing the strategy I used to handle them, but it's nothing we haven't seen before. After nearly 2 years of effort, over 50 billion simulations, and countless hours spent routing the entire game, I finally arrive at the Pokemon League. When I first started this project, my initial attempt put my team around level 70 to beat the Elite Four, so it feels really good to show up now with a team that's level 51. It's been a long road, and there's only 5 battles left, but I'm not worried. My victory was guaranteed the moment I started the game. Before I challenge the Pokemon League, I need to do a bit of prep. The first bit is catching Azelf, which I find in Lake Valor. I use the Master Ball for the guaranteed capture, and will be replacing Roserade with it. Azelf is level 50 when I catch it, and I plan on entering the Elite Four with my team at level 51 or below. Luckily, Azelf has a stopping rule right at level 51, so I can train it in the old chateau to pack as many special attack EVs as I can onto it. The next step is to start feeding my team vitamins to get their stats where they need to be for the final battles. I've been saving up money the entire game, and will be spending around 200,000 Pokédollars on all the vitamins I need. Back at Lake Verity, I use a Figgy Berry and a piece of memory mail to track games that have a minus attack nature Hippowdon. This will be the only piece of memory mail I need for the Elite Four. Then there's a bit of daycare training to get everyone to the correct level. I actually don't want my entire team to be at 51, and strategically leave a couple at a lower level. All that's left to do now is tutor a couple moves onto my Pokemon, sell every item I don't need so I can buy more vitamins, pick up a couple berries I need, and prime Vaporeon and Azelf to specific HP ranges. But then I'm ready to face the Elite Four. Normally you'd expect the champion to be the most challenging, but if I were to organize these battles by difficulty, Aaron the Bug Guy tops the list, followed closely by Flint. Lucian and Cynthia are pretty easy, and Bertha, well, Bertha is pathetic. This means that my very first battle in the Elite Four will also be my most difficult. To understand why Aaron is so challenging, we need to analyze his team. As the first member of the Elite Four, he simultaneously has the weakest team by levels and stats, but the strongest when facing him in every possible game. He opens with Yanmega, which has a problematic moveset. Double Team and U-Turn can cause huge problems with keeping the games in sync, and it's offensively powerful enough to one-hit KO most of my team. I have no choice but to one-hit KO it. Infernape and Azelf can both do it, but will lead to Aaron sending out different Pokemon next. There's no way I can deal with Drapion yet, so I'll have to have him send out Scizor, which means Azelf will be my opener. Scizor is offensively powerful but slow, and since it knows a priority move, I can bait it with a primed Azelf and encore it, buying myself a few turns. I'll need these turns to prep for the rest of Aaron's team. Depending on who I have out when Scizor faints, Aaron will send out a different member of his team. I can't one-hit KO any of them without some extra help, and looking at their movesets, they all have a move which makes it difficult to face them directly. But more importantly, they all know a high crit ratio move. Normally, the AI will calculate which of its moves does the most damage to you, and just pick that one. But the AI will also randomly pick high crit ratio moves. This makes it impossible to predict what the AI will do in every game, which is something I rely on heavily in most battles. To deal with Vespiquen and Heracross, I can have Hippowdon use Stealth Rock against Scizor, which lowers their health on switch-in, and allows Infernape and Azelf to one-hit KO them. Even my slowest Infernapes and Azelfs are faster, so they'll move first and take care of these two. But Drapion's a monster. It's faster than my entire team, has a Citrus Berry, is only weak to ground, and one-hit KOs everyone. Everyone except for Hippowdon. All versions of Hippowdon are slower than Drapion, but since it knows Ice Fang, going second will just result in getting flinched. To deal with Drapion, I need Haunter to use Trick Room, which lets slower Pokemon move first. With the bonus damage from Sandstorm and Stealth Rock, and a Soft Sand boosting Earthquake's power, Drapion can be taken out in one turn. Unless Hippowdon has an attack-reducing nature, in which case it could take 1 or 2 turns. I can't afford to be uncertain about how long it will take to KO Drapion, since Trick Room only lasts for 5 turns. After Drapion faints, Heracross will come out, and if Trick Room is still active, it will move first and clobber Azelf. This situation is a prime case for Memory Mail. By removing the Soft Sand and keeping Hippowdons with an attack-reducing nature at a lower level, I can guarantee that it will take 2 Earthquakes to KO Drapion. Games that can do it in one will just protect on the first turn. This is only possible because of Drapion's ability, Battle Armor, which prevents crits, so I don't have to worry about low attack versions of Hippowdon critting and defeating Drapion in one turn. Altogether, this means that I need to get off Stealth Rock and Trick Room against Scizor, with 2 turns of Trick Room remaining when it faints. Before the battle with Aaron starts, I check my memory mail to desync games with low attack Hippowdons. Every other game will then use 2 rare candies to bring Hippowdon to level 51, and equip a Soft Sand to boost ground-type moves. Then in low attack games, I just give Hippowdon an Aspear Berry to handle freezing. The battles are done separately, and low attack versions will go first while everyone else meanders around the room. Just as planned, Azelf one-hit KOs Yanmega, then Scizor comes out. And I hope you're ready, because we're about to apply everything we've learned thus far. The AI will attempt to quick attack my primed Azelf, and I switch to Togekiss, which is holding the Sticky Barb. I can then use Encore to lock Scizor into using quick attack. Encore will last between 4 and 8 turns, one of which is spent on the turn I used Encore. One turn is spent sending out Hippowdon, and one for Stealth Rock. But with only one turn left on the shortest Encores, I don't have enough time to switch in Haunter and use Trick Room, so I have to stall until Encore is guaranteed to be over so I can reapply it. I do this by using Yawn and switching in Vaporeon on the turn that it will be asleep. The AI will use a full restore next turn to heal off Sticky Barb damage and cure sleep, while Vaporeon uses Substitute. This gives me a turn to heal Togekiss. Encore is now guaranteed to be over, but since Vaporeon has been primed to be within Quick Attack range after the Substitute and Sandstorm damage, Scizor will use Quick Attack again. This lets me send out Togekiss to Encore it a second time, which gives Haunter the turns it needs to come out, heal Hippowdon, and set up Trick Room. Since I need Drapion to come out while Trick Room is still active, I send out Infernape to take a hit and stall a turn while Sticky Barb KOs Scizor. Since I don't retrieve the Barb, it's now gone for good. This puts me in the exact position I need to be in. With 2 turns of Trick Room left and Stealth Rock already set up, the rest of the battle goes exactly as planned. Hippowdon KOs Drapion in exactly 2 turns. Azelf deals with Heracross, and Infernape deals with Vespiquen. After the battle ends, the 2 scenarios switch places, and I redo all the inputs for the entire battle, with the one minor change of Hippowdon only using Earthquake once. But once these games finish their battle, I can resync everything against the walls, and Aaron is finally defeated in every possible reality.
That's crazy.
Next up is Bertha, and before I challenge her, I resync all my Hippowdons by giving the low attack versions the 2 rare candies they missed out on previously. Then I start the next battle. Bertha's team is slow, and almost every one of her Pokemon know Earthquake. This makes her fight pretty simple. Whiscash is defeated by Togekiss using Grass Knot, then she'll send out Golem. Like I mentioned before, the AI will generally just pick the move it calculates to deal the most damage. Bertha's downfall is that Earthquake deals too much damage, and with no high crit ratio moves to obscure it, I can bait it out, then Encore it. This gives Azelf a couple of free turns to use Nasty Plot before sweeping her entire team. The fight ends with my highest level at 52, and I'll be doing the next battle against Flint at level 52 as well. Flint opens with Houndoom, and his downfall is Sunny Day. The AI will use Sunny Day if the weather is rain or sandstorm, and since Hippowdon causes a sandstorm when it enters battle, Houndoom will use Sunny Day in every game. Houndoom will always go first and make it sunny, but then Hippowdon can freely use Earthquake for the one-hit KO. Flint will send out Rapidash next, which knows Solar Beam and Sunny Day. The AI loves using Solar Beam when the weather is sunny, since it skips its charge turn. But if I switch Hippowdon back in, it will instantly change the weather to Sandstorm, forcing the AI to charge up instead. This buys me a turn to send in Togekiss, which tanks an ineffective Solar Beam. Since the weather is Sandstorm again, and Rapidash knows Sunny Day, I know it will use it next turn. I've carefully managed Togekiss's speed to ensure that it's always slower than Rapidash. This lets me go second, which lets me Encore Sunny Day instead of Solar Beam. With Rapidash locked into using Sunny Day, I can switch to Vaporeon and create a substitute. Then I Baton Pass to Hippowdon. Vaporeon is kept at a lower level here so that it's guaranteed to be slower than Rapidash. This makes sure that when I Baton Pass and send out Hippowdon, a Sandstorm starts. If Vaporeon had went first, I'd send out Hippowdon, a Sandstorm would start, and Rapidash would immediately make it sunny again. Since the weather is now Sandstorm, even if Encore is over, Rapidash will still use Sunny Day a 5th and final time. This buys me the final turn I need to use Earthquake and KO Rapidash. This entire process was all just to get a substitute in front of Hippowdon, which is passed from Vaporeon through Baton Pass. The protection from substitute gives me the safety to take a hit from Magmortar, and use Earthquake for the one-hit KO. Flint will then send in Flareon, which has a moveset so tragic it might be a war crime. The AI won't use Overheat against Pokemon that resist it, and won't use Giga Impact until it reaches low health. It also won't use Quick Attack because it deals less damage than Overheat. This leaves Will-O-Wisp as its move of choice. The AI doesn't recognize substitutes at all, so it doesn't realize that Will-O-Wisp is completely useless against Vaporeon. Since the AI will keep thinking it can burn me, it will just keep picking Will-O-Wisp over and over again. At this point, The battle is basically over, and I essentially just clown on Flint until I finally baton pass to Hippowdon to Earthquake twice and end it. The final member of the Elite Four is Lucian, and I've specifically captured Azelf for this battle. Azelf can be taught in Prison, which is a move that prevents your opponent from using any moves that you also know. Lucian's opening Pokemon is Mr. Mime, and I've taught Azelf the same moves as it through TMs, except for Reflect. When the battle starts, I use Imprison, forcing Lucian to only pick Reflect. This effect lasts until Azelf faints or is switched out, so I have as many turns as I want to set up while the AI uselessly spams Reflect. The AI also isn't smart enough to recognize this as a situation where it should switch to a different team member. I haven't talked about it at all, but I've been carefully picking my moves and strategies to avoid triggering the AI's switching logic for the entire game. After spending several turns buffing up, Azelf can sweep Lucian's entire team at level 54. This finishes off the Elite Four, leaving only Cynthia, the champion, as my final battle. Cynthia easily has the most menacing team in the game. Besides being the highest level, it's also the most diverse, most powerful by stats, and features her insanely fast and strong Garchomp. But she also has an Achilles heel, her Milotic, which lets me defeat her at level 54. Her opener is Spiritomb, and mine is Haunter. Haunter finally fulfills its true purpose in this battle, using Destiny Bond. It doesn't matter what Spiritomb picks, all its moves have 100% accuracy and will KO Haunter. This triggers Destiny Bond, which KOs Spiritomb in return. Doing this accomplishes two things. First, it takes out Spiritomb, which I have no other way to deal with. And second, it causes Cynthia to send out Milotic next, because her AI mistakenly views Mirror Coat as a super effective move against Haunter, and doesn't take into account that Haunter has already fainted. Prior to this battle, I used the TM to teach Azelf Torment after defeating Lucian. Torment prevents your opponent from using the same move twice in a row, and is the key to this battle. I used Torment on Milotic, and then let Azelf faint to get a free switch-in on Vaporeon. When Cynthia's AI is deciding what move to use, it won't use Surf since Vaporeon is immune to it, and won't use Ice Beam since it's ineffective. This just leaves Dragon Pulse and Mirror Coat. Since Milotic is tormented, it can't use Dragon Pulse twice in a row, and it will alternate between using these two moves. I can't actually guarantee which one she chooses first, but I can use an option select with a potion to stall a turn, aligning every game onto an attacking turn. Milotics that use Mirror Coat deal no damage, since Mirror Coat only reflects damage, and Milotics that use Dragon Pulse damage Vaporeon a little bit. Using a healing item desyncs these two scenarios. In games where Milotic used Mirror Coat, nothing happens, but in games where Milotic used Dragon Pulse, this heals Vaporeon, and Milotic is tormented into using Mirror Coat. Now both scenarios are aligned on a Dragon Pulse turn, and use Protect. With Torment lasting until Milotic faints, Vaporeon can just buff up on the turns that Milotic uses Mirror Coat, and Protect on the turns it attacks. Using Substitute is necessary here, as Protect fails if used multiple times in a row, and using an item doesn't count as a real turn. Vaporeon also knows Aqua Ring, which passively heals it and deals with the health loss from Substitute. After maxing out Vaporeon's speed and attack, I baton pass all these buffs in a Substitute to Infernape on a turn that Milotic is using Mirror Coat. With its stats maxed out, Infernape is fast enough and strong enough to one-hit KO Cynthia's entire team with Close Combat. Close Combat lowers my defense, which means getting hit at all would KO me. When Cynthia sends out Lucario, she will determine that Extreme Speed would KO a defenseless Infernape, but because I baton passed a Substitute over, Infernape survives and finishes the battle. Cynthia is defeated in every game with the same team and the same strategy every time. Despite the billions of possibilities, this is the only outcome. My team is entered into the Hall of Fame, with Azelf and Haunter remembered for their sacrifice, and finally, after over 120 hours, the credits roll.
That was craziness.
At the end of all this, I'm left with an overwhelming sense of relief that it's over, and my annotated list of inputs, which will always beat the game in the exact way you just saw, regardless of the starting seed, the time of day, or day of the year. So much research and consideration went into these inputs, and there's so much I've left out of this video for being too technical or too time consuming for how minor it is. Billions of simulations were summarized in just a few words. There's so much room for improvement as well, decreasing the level of my team, doing battles at a lower level or with less items, doing it on set mode, making use of quantum Pokemon. But for now, I think I'm going to rest. Thanks for watching.
That's crazy.